That's an intriguing premise. It really makes people think twice about the places they envision spending their post-retirement years. Highlighting the potential hidden health risks is a great way to raise awareness while also providing practical advice. What types of places do you envision discussing in the video, like places that are physically demanding, high stress, or environments that may contribute to loneliness or other health issues? The stories from real retirees could really bring the message home and show the reality behind these choices. Story 1. The overcrowded mall. After retiring, Dorothy, a lively woman in her late 70s, found herself with plenty of free time. Eager to stay active, she decided to spend her days at the local shopping mall. With its variety of stores, food courts, and constant flow of people, it seemed like the perfect place to window shop and get her daily steps in. Initially, Dorothy felt great. The walking gave her a sense of purpose, and the busy environment kept her mind engaged. However, as weeks passed, she started to notice changes. The long hours spent navigating through crowds, dodging other shoppers, and waiting in line at the coffee shop began to take a toll on her body. Her knees ached more than usual, and her lower back felt strained. The discomfort grew, but Dorothy brushed it off, thinking that the walking would only help her stay fit. Yet it wasn't just her body that was suffering. The constant noise, loud music, chatter, and the hum of machines was beginning to wear on her. Dorothy realized that she was becoming more stressed, overwhelmed by the sensory overload. The bright lights, fast-moving crowds, and constant rush of activity felt suffocating. What had once been an energizing space now became a source of tension. Dorothy began dreading her visits, feeling more fatigued than invigorated, and her joint pain worsened. Eventually, she realized that what she thought was helping her stay active was actually causing more harm, both physically and mentally. One day, after a particularly long shopping trip, Dorothy took a seat on a bench in the mall. As she observed other older adults around her, she noticed that many seemed just as exhausted as she felt. Some were clutching their backs or holding onto railings as they climbed the escalator. It dawned on her that, while the mall seemed like an ideal place for physical activity, it actually contributed to physical strain and mental stress, especially for older adults. The lesson here is simple. Malls, while they may appear to be a great place to stay active, can do more harm than good. The overstimulation, the strain from walking on hard surfaces, and the constant noise and chaos can take a serious toll on health over time. Instead of spending hours in a crowded mall, consider low-impact activities that promote both physical and mental well-being, like a leisurely walk in a peaceful park, or joining a gentle yoga class. Retirement is about enjoying life, not wearing yourself out. Story 2. The empty coffee shop. After retiring, Harry, a 72-year-old widower, found himself adjusting to the newfound quiet of his life. Having spent decades working and raising a family, the peacefulness of retirement felt both comforting and challenging. Seeking solace, Harry began visiting a small, quiet coffee shop near his home, thinking it would be the perfect spot to relax with a cup of coffee and reflect on his life. At first, the calm atmosphere and gentle hum of the cafe offered Harry the tranquility he had been craving. It felt like a peaceful refuge from the hectic world. He would sit by the window, sip his coffee, and watch the world go by. The silence was comforting, and without the constant demands of work, he felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in years. It was the perfect place to enjoy solitude and escape the busyness of life. However, as the weeks went on, Harry started to notice a shift in his feelings. What had once been a peaceful retreat began to feel more isolating. The lack of social interaction, combined with the quiet surroundings, started to wear on him. He would sit in the same spot every day, sipping his coffee and watching people pass by, but never engaging with anyone. Slowly, Harry began to feel disconnected from the world around him. The silence no longer felt soothing. It felt lonely. As his visits became a daily routine, Harry realized that his solitude was affecting his mood. He felt more like an observer of life than a participant in it. The once comforting coffee shop now felt like a trap. He began missing the warmth of conversations, the laughter of friends, and the simple act of sharing a meal or drink with someone. What seemed peaceful at first now deepened his sense of loneliness. Harry's mental health began to suffer. He became more withdrawn, and his thoughts started to spiral. The quietness of the cafe had replaced the comforting noise of companionship, and he began to question his purpose. Despite its calm environment, the coffee shop lacked the human connection Harry needed to thrive. He felt increasingly disconnected from his community, and this isolation took a toll on his emotional well-being. The lesson from Harry's story is clear. Social isolation, even in a peaceful setting, can profoundly affect your mental health. While a quiet coffee shop might seem like the ideal place to escape the busyness of life, too much time spent alone without social interaction can lead to feelings of loneliness, sadness, and even depression. It's essential to find a balance between solitude and connection. Instead of retreating to empty spaces, consider visiting places where you can engage with others. Whether it's a local community center, a group class, or simply inviting a friend for coffee, human connection is vital to maintaining both emotional and physical health, especially as we age. Story 3. The Busy Gym. At 65, Nancy was determined to maintain her health and vitality after retirement. Having spent much of her life working hard and raising a family, she now had more time to focus on herself. Eager to stay fit and active, Nancy decided to join a busy local gym, surrounded by younger people lifting weights and performing intense exercises. She felt inspired to push herself beyond her limits, believing that age was just a number and that she could keep up with the younger crowd. In the beginning, Nancy felt great. The high-energy workouts invigorated her, and she relished the feeling of pushing her body through challenging routines. She was lifting weights, doing intense cardio, and following rigorous fitness classes. The gym's lively atmosphere made her feel part of a community, and she enjoyed the adrenaline rush that came with her demanding exercise regimen. At times, she even felt younger than she had in years. However, after a few months of pushing herself too hard, Nancy began to notice a change. One morning, while lifting weights, she felt a sharp pain in her lower back. Initially, she thought it was just temporary discomfort, but as the days passed, the pain worsened. She struggled to bend over, sit for extended periods, or even walk without. Nancy eventually visited her doctor, who diagnosed her with a back injury caused by overexertion and poor form during her workouts. The realization hit Nancy hard. Her intense workout routine, which she had believed was helping her stay young, had actually caused long-term damage to her body. In her desire to stay in shape, she had ignored the signals her body was sending. Pushing herself too hard, especially at her age, had put unnecessary strain on her muscles and joints. Instead of feeling empowered by her workouts, she now found herself sidelined by an injury that would take months to heal. Nancy's experience was a harsh wake-up call. She had joined the gym with the intention of staying healthy and active, but in her pursuit of fitness, she had neglected the importance of listening to her body and recognizing her limits. What had seemed like a great way to stay fit ended up causing her more harm than good. She realized that retirement was the perfect time to focus on her health, but not at the expense of her well-being. The lesson from Nancy's story is clear. Retirement is a great time to stay active, but not at the expense of your health. Intense workouts and high-energy gyms may be appealing, but they can lead to physical strain and injury, especially as we age. Instead of pushing yourself to extremes, consider gentler exercises like walking, swimming, or yoga. These activities provide great benefits without the risk of overexertion and can help you maintain flexibility, strength, and overall well-being in a safer, more sustainable way. Remember, staying fit doesn't mean pushing your body to its breaking point. It means finding balance and moving in ways that support long-term health. Story 4. The Crowded Restaurant. At the age of 80, Frank had always loved the social aspect of dining out. After retiring, he found great joy in visiting popular restaurants and food courts, savoring a variety of dishes while soaking in the lively atmosphere. He enjoyed the sounds of clinking silverware, the buzz of conversations, and the constant movement of waiters rushing around. It felt like an exciting, lively way to pass the time, far more engaging than eating alone at home. Frank loved being surrounded by people, and the energy of bustling eateries made every meal feel special. He couldn't resist indulging in the delicious meals they offered. In the beginning, dining out felt like a treat, a fun way to break up the monotony of everyday life. But over time, Frank found himself visiting crowded restaurants more frequently. The variety of foods, from rich pastas to decadent desserts, tempted him every time. He would often order larger portions than usual, enjoying the abundance of food that came with each meal. It wasn't long before he realized that his waistline was expanding and his blood pressure was starting to climb. What once seemed like harmless indulgence was now taking a toll on his health. Frank's routine of eating out regularly was not only affecting his weight but his overall health as well. The high-calorie foods, loaded with sodium and unhealthy fats, were putting a serious strain on his heart and circulatory system. Despite his love for dining out, Frank could no longer ignore the signs that his body was struggling to keep up with his eating habits. His once comfortable clothes started to feel tight, and he often felt sluggish and fatigued after meals. The joy of dining out had started to be overshadowed by the physical discomfort he was now experiencing. One day, after a particularly rich meal at his favorite restaurant, Frank realized that he was finding it increasingly difficult to keep up with his friends, who were much more mindful of their eating habits. His blood pressure had risen, and he worried about developing more serious health issues like heart disease or diabetes. What had once been a pleasurable activity had now become a reminder of how easy it was to fall into unhealthy habits when surrounded by tempting food options in a crowded environment. The lively atmosphere of the restaurant, once a source of joy and energy, had now become a setting that contributed to overeating and poor food choices. The distractions of socializing and the convenience of large portion sizes made it easy for Frank to lose track of what he was putting into his body. The overwhelming variety of foods in a busy restaurant environment often led him to overeat, forgetting the importance of portion control and nutrition. Frank's story highlights a crucial lesson. It's tempting to dine out often, but being surrounded by unhealthy food options and the temptation to overeat can lead to serious health issues. While dining out can be an enjoyable social activity, it's important to be mindful of the foods we're choosing and the portion sizes we're consuming. Instead of frequent visits to crowded, unhealthy restaurants, consider cooking at home with healthier ingredients or opting for restaurants that offer lighter, balanced meals. By making more mindful choices, you can continue to enjoy dining out without sacrificing your health. Story 5. The exotic vacation destination Ellen, a spirited 74-year-old, had always dreamed of exploring far-off lands. After retiring, she felt like the world was finally at her fingertips and couldn't wait to travel. Europe had always been at the top of her list, and the thought of experiencing new cultures, tasting unfamiliar foods, and seeing famous landmarks excited her beyond belief. She booked a grand trip across Europe, eager to check off all the destinations she had fantasized about for years. For Ellen, retirement meant the freedom to embark on the adventures she had always wanted but never had the time for. However, the reality of long-haul flights and cross-continental travel quickly hit Ellen harder than she expected. The 10-hour flight from New York to Paris left her exhausted, and the jet lag made it difficult to adjust to the local time zone. She found herself feeling physically drained before even setting foot on the cobbled streets of her first destination. While she had once relished the thrill of early morning departures and the excitement of hopping from one country to the next, the travel schedule now felt overwhelmingly grueling. During her trip, Ellen also noticed that navigating through unfamiliar cities and dealing with time zone changes took a toll on her energy levels. She couldn't shake the fatigue, and the constant movement left her feeling worn out. What was once a joy, exploring the Eiffel Tower or walking along the canals of Venice, felt more like a physical challenge than a fun adventure. The unfamiliar food and different sleep schedules also began to affect her digestive system and overall well-being. Ellen had always been a go-with-the-flow traveler, but now her body was sending clear signals that this type of travel wasn't as enjoyable as it used to be. As her trips continued, Ellen found herself struggling to keep up with the pace she had once embraced. She became more aware of her body's limitations and began to feel that the effort required to travel was no longer worth the reward. The constant rushing, the long travel hours, and the unpredictability of foreign environments left her feeling drained instead of exhilarated. Despite the beauty of the places she was visiting, Ellen began to feel disconnected from the joy of travel, realizing that the thrill she had once felt no longer outweighed the exhaustion. After a few more exhausting trips, Ellen made the difficult decision to slow down her travel plans. While she still loved the idea of experiencing new cultures, she realized that the fast-paced, high-energy travel she used to enjoy was no longer sustainable for her at this stage of life. She learned that traveling at a slower pace, perhaps focusing on fewer destinations with longer stays, could provide a more enjoyable and less physically taxing experience. She no longer felt the pressure to visit as many places as possible in a short amount of time. The lesson from Ellen's story is an important one. While travel is a wonderful and enriching experience, overexerting yourself in unfamiliar, high-energy environments can take a toll on your health as you age. Long flights, unpredictable schedules, and unfamiliar foods can all contribute to physical exhaustion, especially as we get older. Instead of pushing yourself to visit faraway places with demanding itineraries, consider more relaxed travel experiences such as cruises, local retreats, or even slower-paced road trips. By listening to your body and adjusting your travel plans, you can continue to enjoy the wonders of the world without sacrificing your well-being. Story 6. The Busy Social Club. At 79, Betty was excited about the prospect of retirement. After decades of working hard, she finally had the time to focus on herself. Seeking new connections and a way to stay active, Betty joined a local social club. The club offered regular gatherings, game nights, and outings, and at first, Betty was thrilled by the chance to meet new people and fill her days with social activities. She loved the idea of spending her free time surrounded by friendly faces and engaging in lively conversations. It felt like a fresh start, and she eagerly attended every event. In the beginning, Betty enjoyed the bustle of the social club. The lively atmosphere made her feel vibrant and connected to others, which was exactly what she was looking for after the quietness of retirement. However, as the months passed, Betty started to notice something troubling. The constant stream of events, from weekly meetings to group dinners and excursions, left her feeling drained. At first, she dismissed the exhaustion as part of the adjustment to retirement, but soon it became clear that the high-energy social gatherings were taking a toll on her. Betty found herself mentally and physically worn out after every club meeting. The constant need to make conversation and keep up with the fast pace of the group began to feel overwhelming. She started to dread the upcoming events, even though she had once been excited about them. What had seemed like a perfect way to fill her time with fun activities and new friendships was beginning to feel like an obligation rather than an enjoyable experience. Betty realized that in her pursuit of socializing, she had overstretched herself, and the result was increased stress and fatigue. As the months went by, Betty's feelings of exhaustion and overwhelm grew. She noticed that the pressure to participate in every event left her with little time to recharge. What used to be a peaceful afternoon at home now seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford. Betty became more isolated, even within the crowded social setting, feeling like she wasn't able to fully engage with people because her energy was always depleted. Her once enjoyable escape into social gatherings had turned into a source of stress, leaving her longing for quiet time. One day, after a particularly busy week filled with back-to-back events, Betty realized that something needed to change. She needed to find a balance between socializing and taking care of her own well-being. The continuous hustle and bustle of the social club had begun to negatively impact her happiness, and she knew she couldn't continue at this pace. Betty took a step back and started to prioritize smaller, more intimate gatherings that allowed her to truly connect with people rather than attending every large event. The lesson from Betty's experience is an important one. While socializing is a wonderful part of retirement, overcrowded social settings may not allow you to recharge properly. Constantly being around people and engaging in high-energy events can lead to mental exhaustion and increased stress, which ultimately reduces overall happiness. It's essential to find the right balance between staying social and carving out time for yourself to relax and rejuvenate. By setting boundaries and focusing on more meaningful interactions, you can enjoy your retirement years without overwhelming yourself. Story 7. The loud movie theater. George, a lively 75-year-old, had always loved going to the cinema. Since his retirement, the idea of spending his weekends catching the latest blockbuster films became a cherished routine. Every Friday, he would head to the local movie theater excited to immerse himself in action, drama, and adventure. The theater's high-tech sound system and big-screen visuals made the experience feel more thrilling, and George felt that it was the perfect way to unwind after a busy week. Having always been a fan of movies, he now had the time to indulge in this passion, and However, as time went on, George began to notice something unsettling. What was once an enjoyable experience of watching movies at the theater started to feel less like a treat and more like a burden. The booming sound systems and flashing lights, designed to enhance the cinematic experience, were beginning to cause him physical discomfort. After every movie, George would leave the theater with a pounding headache and his ears ringing from the intense volume. The overstimulation of his senses, especially his hearing, was starting to affect him in ways he hadn't expected. At first, George thought it was just a one-off incident. But as he continued attending movies, the pattern repeated itself. The loud soundtracks and booming explosions that made the movies exciting for younger audiences were proving to be too much for George. The constant strain on his hearing was leaving him feeling drained and, at times, disoriented. It wasn't just the headaches that bothered him. The overwhelming noise and bright lights were also taking a toll on his mental state. What used to be a fun and relaxing experience was now causing him more stress than enjoyment. One afternoon, after a particularly intense action film, George realized he could no longer ignore the toll the cinema was taking on his well-being. His hearing had become more sensitive, and he found himself feeling irritable after leaving the theater. He spoke to a few friends who had similar experiences, and they shared their concerns about how the modern movie theater environment could be harsh on older ears. That's when it hit him. His love for the movies had to be balanced with a more mindful approach to his health. The more George reflected on his situation, the more he understood that the loud, fast-paced movie theater experience was no longer the right choice for him. He started exploring alternative ways to enjoy movies, such as watching them at home with a more moderate sound system, or attending matinee showings when the theaters were less crowded and the volume was lower. George found that he could still enjoy films in a way that didn't leave him feeling overstimulated or physically uncomfortable. He also noticed that avoiding overly loud environments allowed him to protect his hearing, which became even more important as he got older. The lesson George learned is crucial. As we age, it's essential to avoid places that overwhelm our senses, particularly environments with high noise levels and bright flashing lights. These overstimulating settings can have a lasting impact on our physical and mental health, especially in retirement when it's even more important to protect our well-being. Instead of seeking out noisy, crowded venues like busy movie theaters, consider quieter alternatives or smaller, more intimate settings that allow you to enjoy the things you love without compromising your health. As we've seen through these stories, retirement is a time to embrace the freedom you've earned, but it's also important to be mindful of your health. Some places, though seemingly harmless, can have a lasting impact on your physical and mental well-being. By choosing wisely where you spend your time, you can make the most of your golden years without unnecessary stress or strain. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment with your thoughts. Did any of these places resonate with you? Drop a 9 if you're already avoiding these spots, or an H if you've learned something new today. Until next time, take care and stay healthy.